Okay, we're live. What's up, Victor Aguilar? Vice
Hey,
Mayor Victor
good morning.
Aguilar.
Good morning, Derek. Thank you for having me. I'm trying to get used to the vice mayor role.
You're you're used to it. You love it. you like it all, right? How was your I don't know, you probably can't share too much, but how was your meeting with the captain?
It was a great meeting. We discussed priorities and we had a discussion about community perception and public perception with the police department, and we're looking to work together to see how we can transform the police department and gain community trust. So yeah, we had a great conversation. Uh, I'm excited for him to be in this role, and it's sad to see Tudor go. Wish him all the best, but I think now we have someone in this leadership position who can transform the police department. So it was a great conversation that we had this morning.
I actually don't know Captain Torres too much, but I've all the officers in San Leandro. I feel like you kind of see them on newspapers or they have a statement that they mention. So I'm always familiar with their names. Like even when before I met Scott Cole, I've seen Scott Cole on different things, or Jeff Tudor or Captain Torres, or who's the one that's always engaged with the community. He's very I think he retired already. He's a San Leandrian. Oh man, he's a good speaker. He speaks to kids
That
very well.
that was, I believe, Lieutenant Benabu.
Vanaboo. Okay, maybe not him. There was another fella. But he really phenomenal guy. I gotta look him up at some point. But there's just some phenomenal, fellas, over and gals over at the PD department. So I don't know too much about Captain Torres. What's some of his background and where do you think his qualifications are? What strengths do you think he'll bring to the force?
I think his background is he was a young cop. Started off with the Explorers and
Mm.
got hired at the age of 20, and has been on the force for over 20 years now. And so he has a bachelor's degree and a master's degree and has that background to help lead the city, but also working internally and working together with the community. So he has a lot of experience, education, and background to help transform me. Some great ideas. I think he wants to gain community trust and talk with the community, get out there, and work together and understand what the community perception is, and also how they can work together, and also how we can work together with folks on the city council. So we had a great conversation. I think he has the leadership to move the police department forward. I think there's been a lot going on in the Black Lives Matter movement and the killing of George Floyd, and so a lot of folks are angry. They want change and want to see transformation, and it starts from the top. And I think having this new leader who's a person of color come into this role, I think it'll be transformational in that sense. I think it takes time, and we got to work together with him, and so does the community. So I'm excited to see what happens and how we move forward together.
I'm excited about it. I'd love to meet him at some point and kind of peek into his brain. I've always been in conversation with Scott Cole, and Tudor's kind of come around some of our events before, and just in general. And this was about a conversation for at least 4 years ago. We were talking about the state of the police department in regards to talent pools, right? And with the and this is when the national message has been going like this, right, before George Floyd. And so what's interesting is that we were talking to Scott and Captain Knox and so forth beforehand, and we want to have them engage the students locally, and kind of chip away, at what the future of talent looks like for policing, right? I mean, there's a lot of interesting things that can be done, as we've all seen the options, that have been presented, and it's forcing a conversation that's very interesting, because we have to imagine our talent pool in the police force differently if we want to retain public safety, right? And it'd be really cool. Like, some of my dreams are like, it'd be great if the police force actually, like, take the percentage of San Leandro in terms of who's Black, Mexican, Asian, Chinese, white, whatever, right? Like, take all the races, maybe in general categories, it's too nuanced to feel individual races, but and do our best to reflect, that population, so that there's a direct reflection, right, of who's monitoring the safety and tracking safety and serving the community, and those who are in the population. So I just thought about that. Now that is such a hard thing to accomplish, though, right? That is such a difficult thing to accomplish. No
It
one wants to
is.
be no one wants to be in the police force right now.
Um, well, I think there are a lot of folks who are passionate. I think there's, a lot going on. And it starts, with the leadership and driving the force together to reimagine what policing looks like and working with the community and gaining their trust. You also mentioned, having the force have a reflection of the community, and having a diverse squad, and also, being inclusionary with LGBTQ. That's one of my bigger advocacy steps. But I think there's going to be a lot of change that is going to be different. And I think partnering. You should have a conversation with Captain Torres to partner with Pilot City. So I think that it'll be a great start to get people involved so that we can all work together. I think the uproar and what happened this past year, and especially during or last year during the pandemic, it's been insane, and a lot of people have gotten together to express their their anger, their frustration, of what's going on, not just with policing, but with awareness and culture and diversity. So I think we're in a great place in San Leandro where we have that talent, we have that diversity, we have folks in our own backyard that we can recruit to join, and I think right now, yes, police are getting a bad rep, but it's they're I think, but they're also moving forward in a direction that will gain community trust, and that's something that we're looking to work together with the police department.
you know um I'm not exactly sure. Oh man, it's one of those things, you just lost it. Damn. Okay. It'll come back eventually. It'll come back. It'll come back. It'll come back. Um, but yeah, this is a really interesting topic, and we can go into it, all day long. And oh, here it is. Here it is. Here it is. See, I love it when it comes back. It's just like, yes, like a wave, right? Um, so I don't know what the legal parameters are, the regulations, and where the bounds are, right, to get to what we need to get to. But there needs to be a very needs to be a perceptional flip, and that perceptional flip is also a fundamental functional flip, right? So, and I don't know what local police departments can do as opposed to state police, as opposed to federal, kind of endeavors and so forth, right? I don't know what's possible, but can local police departments make complete turns on how they hire and what they can do and what's legal and what's possible, right? Can we fit within creative parameters to find out what that flip is? For example, can San Leandro Police Department just put out a top 5 directives that we're now doing, right? that is innovative, that is different, that works to hit strategic points to create community trust, sure, but that shouldn't be the goal, because you don't build trust by saying I want community trust, right? You build community trust because we are reflecting the pool of the population. We are treating people, who have emergencies in an effective way, right? And we are, training our police, in a way that actually allows them to be effective in these circumstances. And we're also collaborating more effectively with other departments within a city to expand services that are preventative, right? Like education, like health and services, right? So like, I don't know what we can do to just like, why aren't we just flipping it entirely? Because the talent pool situation for police departments are zero anyways, like it's just so hard to even have people who want to be that, and so there's no future for it if we don't turn it, and have it rebuilt or slowly rebuilt, right? I don't, that's a very deep question, but
it is, and I think I understand what you're saying. That, and having that conversation with Captain Torres, there will be policy changes. There would be organizing structure, but also priorities that he's working on to help change that, to implement this new strategy and how we work together with with the community, with his subordinates, and with the department. So I think that's something that is being worked on right now, as we speak. And he's currently in a unity in the community meeting with that organization. Mm-hmm. And so I think that we had a great conversation. There's a lot of exciting things coming down the pipeline with the transformation. And so, we're giving him a chance to see how things happen and how they transform.
Okay, I'd like to meet Captain Torres at some point. So this is an interesting conversation and an interesting segue. And we'll have Phoebe and Sapar introduce themselves in a little bit. But what's interesting about this conversation is we're talking about digital equity today, right? We're talking about preparing our young people, to prepare our families, to prepare our seniors, to prepare and to implement and take action on getting people connected to the society that we all live in currently, right? And be able to actually build up that Maslow hierarchy, right, of opportunities and services and people having access, right? So that it's preventative, right? To not have as many people who are out, just wandering into, Walmart with mental health conditions, right? And then being struck by people in a force, right? In the first place, right? How can we start to transform our people and our populations so that they're most prepared and most, resourced, right? So that they can actually get to their futures, right? In where the waves are going and where the economic gains are, right? In people's lives. So thanks for being here. I'm going to have our alumni co-host introduce himself and a little bit about their projects from our last program. And we're here to talk about yourself, your story, and your interest in digital equity for San Leandro. So Phoebes, why don't you share a little bit about yourself, where you're coming from, your involvement with Pod City, your project, and maybe an interest, why you're interested in this particular podcast with Vice Mayor.
Okay, so I'm Phoebe Epplett, and I was part of the internship program last year. I originally built my project for Kaiser Permanente, although we ended up having an internship directly with Pilot City since they had to withdraw due to COVID. But what my project was, I built it with my team, was a vitamin dispenser. It was a physical machine where it could measure out vitamins and like dispense it through capsules. That way you didn't have to like manually measure it yourself. We also had a software portion of it where you could like enter in health information and it would give you a vitamin recommendation. Although, like, since we aren't health professionals, it wasn't quite an official thing, but it was just an added feature to it. And I'm interested in digital equity in San Leandro. Well, I wouldn't say just San Leandro, just in general, because like the society we live in now, it's so connected to the internet, and like there's so many things I've discovered online. And so I would want this as an opportunity for everyone because it's really important.
Thank you, Phoebes. Sapar, what about yourself?
So my name is Suparn Satya. I partnered with Pilot City alongside my team, and we worked with Strategy of Things to create a smart school solution. So we basically tried to create a more efficient attendance tracker that relied on more contactless tracking because of the COVID pandemic. And through it, we wanted to create like a universal ID card that stored all the information of a student so that, a lot of students, forget their ID cards, or ID cards aren't that useful in school. And we wanted to provide some sort of functionality similar to how Apple makes those cool Apple cards that everyone attaches to. We wanted to make something like that for our school or for a local company. And that card would have various functionalities. It would store attendance information, or it would be able to open locks for lockers or store money or student balance within the card. And that card would be universal. It would be for the entire year, or for the entire, all 4 years of the student going to that high school, or that employee going to a specific company. And in terms of interest for digital equity, I'm a huge fan of tech, and I think that it's an amazing opportunity so that everyone can have that opportunity to learn about tech and kind of grow with tech as tech is evolving.
Great, thank you. And I guess I'll pass this to the vice mayor here. What is your interest in digital equity, in building on this conversation? Because you're not necessarily, Tony Battaglia, our CTO, for the city of San Leandro. So you're elected official, right? Who has a background in a variety of things that we would like to get into. But, in a short snippet, like what's your primary charge here and why you have interest in digital equity?
Thank you, Derek, and thank you, Phoebe and Sapar. I think the passion behind it is making sure that everybody has access. I can tell you that I went to a restaurant yesterday, and it was outdoor dining. I was given a business card that had a QR code on it, and in my mind, I said, what if I didn't have a cell phone? How am I supposed to read this menu? Because a lot of folks are moving towards having everything digital or having access to internet. And in that sense, there are those, a lot of folks that I work with are seniors, one who are in a fixed income, who can't afford internet, who can't afford a smartphone. Some of them just only have a landline or a flip phone that does not have Wi-Fi access. So, there's that divide with that demographic, but also, children. And I think making sure that folks are able to go to that restaurant and be able to look at that menu and have some sort of tablet or what have you, or a smartphone to be able to do so, and internet connection. And a lot of this, when the pandemic hit, we had to switch over to online schooling, and that was now that is the new norm, and it was tough for a lot of folks. I think one of the heartbreaking stories is watching a snippet that came up. I believe it was two little girls who were at a fast food restaurant parking lot doing their homework, connecting to Wi-Fi, and that was the only way that they can do it. My mom is battling COVID, and I went to my grandma's house well, my aunt's house now in East LA, and my aunt didn't have internet. She didn't have cable. And so I had to, I was those two little girls going to Starbucks or going to the library to tap into Wi-Fi. And I asked my aunt, what was the reason? She's like, well, I don't need it because I can't afford it. And everything that I do, I call my doctor. So it's educating those folks and providing services and getting funding to help subsidize access and partnering with folks, maybe giving portable hotspots. The library does do that. They have hotspots that people can check out so that they can have connectivity. But that's something that, I'm looking to work and to close that digital divide and bridge that gap in that sense, to make sure that everybody has, equal access, and also gaining access to a tablet, and educating them on how to use that. There's a nonprofit that I run called Lavender Seniors of the East Bay. And there is a new program that we're starting called Communication Relieves Isolation. And we've partnered with Amazon to help donate Amazon shows to give out to our seniors. And with the funding that we get, because we are a nonprofit, we're looking to provide internet service or Wi-Fi service to some of those seniors. And so we're in the process of working with a communications company to figure out which provider works best, and who can provide the best deal to help bridge this gap. So I think Phoebe and Sapar, I think here we need to figure out how we do that in San Leandro. What ideas can we bring? How can we partner and gain those devices, and also work with the city, work with Tony Battaglia to figure that out. Maybe providing free internet to the whole city is something that we can probably do, and attract people to move to San Leandro. Hey, move here, you buy a house or you rent, you get free Wi-Fi.
Yeah, dude, I love that. So because Oakland got funded by Jack Dorsey with Twitter, right? $10 million to do Oakland Undivided. So it's a hashtag Oakland Undivided, and Jack Dorsey, founder of Twitter, funded Oakland $10 million to essentially fund tech exchange, to get everyone a computer, to get everyone a Wi-Fi who needs it, that are students, right? So they can learn. But for us being a gigabit city, having 44, 50, I don't know how many strands we got now of fiber optics, but that's a lot of strands in fiber optic strand land, and that can do a lot, man. Like, we can do so much. Like, everyone can have mirrored speeds, 100 download, 100 megabits per second upload, and we already have Wi-Fi. Tony already put out public Wi-Fi in the downtown. That's where the SL Wi-Fi comes in, right? So I love that. I love the idea of having like a, digital, like internet for all, right? For San Leandro. And is that what you want to do with it? Is this what we're doing in our program with you? Like, is that what you would like to? I know we didn't finalize it yet. We kind of research, design, and pilot a digital equity initiative in San Leandro to advance the economic or social resilience for residents like seniors, families, college, non-English speakers. But like, would you be interested in elevating that to, design programs to get internet for everyone type of thing?
I think this is why we're having the discussion and conversation. And, when I was a kid, I went through the Academy of Business Leadership to try to figure out how to become an entrepreneur. And I think in this sense, Pilot City helps bring those ideas, so that the relationships that we build and the ideas that we come up with and create, we can bring them to fruition and partner together. Phoebe had, a great invention that she was talking about, having a vitamin dispenser to kind of parse out certain amounts of vitamins. And Sapar also had a great idea with this, universal ID card. And I think, we can bring those ideas to partner in that sense, to work and advocate to close the digital divide. And I think that's a direction we're going in. And it starts with passion, advocacy, and working together, and also finding the funding to help do this and building those relationships. And then we can take a look back and say, wow, we did this. You know, it started, we have Wi-Fi downtown, but having the whole city connected is a fantastic idea. And I think that's something, the direction that we need to go in. I mean, I was just doing a speed test where I'm at right now, and I had 36 megabytes per second. I mean, it's, you know, you also need fast internet too to stream videos, or, you know, a lot of kids who are working or working remotely and are getting educated remotely need those speeds to watch videos, educational videos, to be on those Zooms calls, because if you don't have fast internet speed, then you have delay and the connectivity. And so sometimes you get broken up, and you know, we were doing a test, and I think the connectivity that I have now is good, but I think, you know, that's the direction we're going in, is to provide free internet for all. And the question is, how do we do that? Who do we get involved, and what's the cost, and how can we get the funding to do this?
Yeah. Okay. Well, first of all, let's do it. Let's have students go for the stars. I think also what's fascinating about, you know, just going for it is that we won't know if we don't try, right?
Right.
And also the reason why we're uniquely positioned in the city of San Leandro is because of our past, or our immediate past, right? That allowed us to get to where we are now. And to give Phoebe and Siparan some perspective, our largest tech company, OSI Soft, needed faster internet for their organization. So Dr. Patrick Kennedy with OSI Soft decided to fund some money to get some fiber, and then pass it through the existing conduit that was already below the city. And the mayor and city manager and the council discovered that this is a great infrastructure to transform the city into a city of innovation by using this fiber optic backbone. And so they said, okay, well, that's cool, that's a great vision, but, you know, who's going to do that, you know? So they went halvesies and funded a chief innovation officer position. And I think you guys might have met her too, Deborah Acosta, when she was around.
Yes.
She was kind of advising some. Phoebe, were you kind of hung out with her for a little bit, right, Debbie?
Yeah, we had the meetings with her every Wednesday where she taught us about like entrepreneuring and how to like have a sustainable business model. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I love the word entrepreneuring. It's like a verb, but Debbie has been involved, you know, since she's been involved with Pilot City since day one, you know, and so they hired a chief innovation officer, and then we start building this so-called innovation ecosystem, right? So with that story, right, with the fiber optic backbone, with the CTO, you know, with Tony's know-how, with Tony's grit, you know, we can do it. We can definitely at least go for it, and people will believe us, right, that we are serious.
Absolutely. And I think having the help Sipar and Phoebe and you know, working together with Pilot City to help push through the ideas, you know, I think we can champion some policy to move forward to see how we can connect the whole city of San Leandro, and, you know, have digital equity access, make it more equitable rather than just focusing in downtown. I know there are some parks that have free Wi-Fi, but, you know, just connecting the whole city, I think, is the direction we need to go in. And who knows, maybe we can get some money from Twitter to help fund that.
Okay, so let's talk about that, right? Because you said that we need some passion, right? People like yourself, people like, you know, the students in the room that are in peripheral cities, but, you know, can support on a regional basis, right? People like us who care about mobilizing our young people to build this future, to advocate perhaps, right? And then you're talking about advocacy, right? And that requires some citizen participation, some resident participation. some, elected, advocacy, some maybe congressional or state level advocacy, it seems like, and we can go try to get some earmarked funds from the state or something like that, or from, I don't know, from the federal level, but also from private dollars. So you're saying, what are, if you were to break it down, right? If we were to actually have a policy of like internet for all scenario, right? And I don't know if that includes like laptops and stuff and, all that, but like if we were to do this kind of internet for all, digital equity for all scenario, what are all the components of that from your perspective as an elected, and you just mentioned it, but is there any other gaps? Because I want to talk about funding eventually, because that sounds like that's the number one thing, right? But what are all the other, are there any other things we're missing in that?
Funding is one of the major components to this, and having a team to work together to help implement that strategy. I can work with staff to help visualize what this would look like, and it would require staff time to work on this as well, and creating that bridge to engage the community, doing that outreach, and educating folks as to what what the city is doing, and educating the folks who do not have a smart device, and holding workshop sessions at the library. That's something that a lot of folks, some of the folks who don't have access are actually afraid of technology. A lot of people are afraid of what they don't know and don't understand. So my mom was a perfect example of, she's like, I don't know how to use a computer. Well, we got her a smartphone, and now you can't get her off that thing. And so she got an email address. It's, you got to put these devices into the hands of the folks and just say, here, this is a tool. This is how you use it, and educating folks on how to use that device. And you start using a smartphone, then you can start using a laptop or a computer, and it's having that access, but also educating those folks, and getting them in that vulnerable position where they can understand and learn, and then also understand how internet works to access. And a lot of folks now are doing are going into telehealth, where I've been seeing my doctor remotely, and having conversations, and talking to my dietitian and what have you. But I think education is key, and having access to do that, fast internet speeds. I think there's a lot of components to that. Funding is one of those. Educating the community, being out there, marketing, and implementing those creative ideas on how we come to see this project to fruition.
Yeah, for sure. What single thread or what single focus might a student, who is doing this program with you focus on? Because there is a lot of pieces to this, but it's generally pretty simple, right? And not simple in terms of what we focus on. It sounds like it's internet, and then the tool to get on the internet, right? It's two components as a start, right? And for San Leandro, we have fiber optics and a lot of strands of it that the city owns, meaning we can be our own internet utility, as opposed to, or internet utility provider, or we can get people like Monkey Brains and Common Networks formerly, kind of in the picture, right? So would free fiber optic internet for all citizens, right, be our focus here? Would that be something that you would agree on or iterate on or whatnot?
Yes, that would be a main focus. I think that'll be the main focus. And if we need to take baby steps, I think another focus is to have a survey monkey, or survey those in areas that are economically challenged to afford the affordability of Wi-Fi, and figure out, if there's a certain area that we need to focus on to provide access, and then move on from there and work on providing internet for all for the whole city. So I think that's something that we can work together on, bringing innovative ideas in that sense, and then focusing on on that main topic of getting everybody access to that, and then devices as well.
And again, for the co-host here, feel free to unmute yourself if you have a particular comment or thought, and I can yield to you. So Victor, when it comes to what we know, I don't know how deep all the pieces of what the city has yet. I don't know. I know some things, but I don't know all the pieces, right? Do we know all the questions that we should be asking to make this happen? So like, do we have data on when the fiber optic master plan got implemented, I think like 2 years ago or something like that, whatever. Do we know the data on which neighborhoods are most disconnected, and specifically what homes are disconnected, right? Do we know where the gaps are, the specific gaps are by homes, or by neighborhoods at least?
Yeah, that's a good question. I do not know, and that's something that I need to do some more research on, and having a gap analysis study on this, and that of course also costs money, but that is something that we can figure out. I can do some more research on the back end to figure out what that is, what that entails, and if that's something that we can put together to conduct a study, and sampling, making phone calls to folks, to ask them some questions, to take statistics if that hasn't already been done. So I think coming up with a survey and figuring out how we implement that, so that there can be work done on that back end to show, hey, there is, we need this. This is very imperative. The way we get funding for things is by having those numbers, having that data available to show this is, a major equity issue. These are the areas that, are less likely to have access to Wi-Fi or have access to technological device or a smartphone, and get funding for that. Those components are very key. And San Leandro, the Human Services and Recreation Department, conducted a gap analysis to get funding for a lot of nonprofit organizations that function and serve the city. So that's something that we can also focus on to get those metrics, if we don't already have them, but I need to do some research on that.
And, for those who are typically disconnected, they're typically not probably contributing information, like answering Survey Monkeys either, right? Or even, answering texts or answering phone calls, I would assume, right? Maybe some people have landlines, right? Maybe sometimes people pick it up. But robots are now, pretty much disconnected from the robocalls that we get, because a lot of telecoms have eliminated those, or at least have, mitigate those. So like, there's a communication barrier to get to the gaps, right? To say, hey, I'm a gap, right? So, any bright ideas there, like on how we can inject ourselves so that we can somehow get the information, or is there something that we just have to brute force kind of start knocking on doors for, or what optimization, how can we communicate effectively to the people who we know are gaps or might be gaps?
I think there are key questions that we need to ask in order to get that the statistics that we need, and so that's brainstorming. What's the household size? What's the ethnic background? Also, income. Do folks have access to technology? Do they have a smartphone? Do they have Wi-Fi? And kind of formulate those together to create this to get the statistics. We'll also create a survey
Right.
to help get our, to help get the data that we need to push forward with funding this project. And I think this, it's a great project to work together to formulate those questions. And I think a lot of the back end work would be working with our team to understand how we can implement this, and so that Phoebe and Sapar can understand, if you want to push something, as an entrepreneur, if you have this idea in the city, this is who you need to contact. This is who you need to work with. This is how things work. You have to have a workflow in place and a strategy in order to make sure that, this idea is fruitful in that event, and you're successful as an entrepreneur, because that's part of how you become successful as a young adult, and having this idea, working together and implementing that strategy. But you have to have a plan, and I think that's why we're here, to discuss that and work together and implement those ideas and put those down in writing and move forward so that we can provide free internet for all in San Leandro.
Yeah. Phoebe, you got a question there?
Yeah, so like based on my understanding of the conversation, like one of the first steps is to find these metrics, like you said, showing the metrics is what's going to get us funding. And how, like, if someone isn't connected to the internet, contributing information on like their situation would be a serious issue. So like for the employer project, would like focusing on how to find these metrics be something that like the employer project would focus on, or would we like focus on the next step after this?
Focusing on those metrics, and then closing the digital divide and understanding how we can get folks that don't have access, whether it's a phone call, or there's a survey that they can fill out. If they walk into a store, we can print out documents, because some people just need things printed out. Maybe at the laundromat, we can place those, and somebody can contact us with the answers. Just tell us how they've answered certain questions, and we can have like 1 through 10 with answers A, B, C, D, and they can give us 10 answers of what they selected. Like number 1, they selected B, 2, they selected A, and then we can use those and input those metrics, and we can have a sample pool, and not survey everybody, but target certain folks in areas of San Leandro.
Yeah, excellent. Sapar, you got a question?
I think Phoebe, was that?
Can I just respond really
Sure.
quick?
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, go for it.
So like what you were saying is like we could like target certain areas in San Leandro that like are poorer or might be a bigger issue, and just like place surveys around for people to like find an answer.
Yes, yes, that's correct. There are also folks who are in certain areas, which would be the affluent part of San Leandro, that are on fixed incomes, and they probably are they may own a home. They have a house, they have equity, but they're cash poor, and so they're on a fixed income. They make enough to pay their property taxes and what have you. But also, some of those folks have landlines, and we can insert a robocall to do a quick survey to get those metrics and present that and work together. And I think that the project also would entail reaching out to CEO of Twitter or Google, and seeing if we can connect, or Amazon. I have a connection at Amazon to see how we can do that to fund this program. And it'll be great to have all of us a part of this project to get that and make this happen, because I think everybody needs to have equal access. But there's also folks who just don't want to utilize the internet. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And so there's folks that are just perfectly fine without it. So I think we just need to focus in providing that, and whoever decides to use it can use it and have access to once we get the funding available and implement the strategy.
So Barn.
Yeah, so one thing that was touched on was definitely the metrics behind it. And I'm not entirely sure that the extent to which the fiber optic cable network has been constructed for the city of San Leandro. And so I was wondering that, what is the step-by-step process for this Internet for All plan? I think that one thing that would definitely be interesting is starting at the school level, because I think if we can get the kids talking to their parents, we can definitely reach a large group of people. And then one thing that we can definitely look into is Google, because I'm pretty sure that Google partners with a lot of schools and giving out Chromebooks. And so I think that would be one of the first companies, as well as, Jack Dorsey, Twitter, for their help in terms of bringing forth equal internet or access to internet. But also there's a second option where it's called the Raspberry Pi, and it's a lot cheaper than Chromebooks, or definitely more cheaper than Macs. And it allows you to access the internet. And if you buy it in bulk, it's probably around maybe $50 to $90, depending on the set you buy. So, bringing forth the access to the internet through the Raspberry Pi, which is relatively affordable, and putting it, starting off with the Raspberry Pi and then sort of growing from there. Is that sort of the plan, sort of progressing?
That's really, I want to insert myself here, Victor. That's really fascinating. So that's true. Like a Raspberry Pi is a computer, right? And technically it's as good as a Chromebook, at least, right? Because you can get a browser on there. Does it have Windows on there, or is it its own proprietary kind of software?
It's its own proprietary software.
Okay, so it's like not. Well, you can put a browser on it though, right? Okay, can you put Google Chrome on it?
The browser, I forgot what it's called, but
okay, cool. Yeah, that's actually really interesting. Vice Mayor.
That I have not heard of Raspberry Pi, so I think that's I think I grew up with technology, but technology is changing every day, and so the younger generation is more in tuned as to the latest and greatest things, and also tools that can help folks get involved and have access like Raspberry Pi. That's something that I kind of want to understand more about and how that works. And it sounds like a great idea, and with the affordability, just to get a device into the hands of those that don't have access to one.
So going deeper into potential ideas, right? Because what we're doing right now is we're brainstorming, right? We're putting it out, laundry, maybe go to laundromat, do some other civic engagement here. Maybe we got some, we're going to schools, right? Schools have access to families, right? And families, have our tendencies of homes and homeowners. We'll probably have to work on seniors in another regard, because they may not have kids in school anymore, right? So I think there's different things that we can kind of itch on to have bigger and bigger, saturation maps, right, of solving the problem. But when it comes to, say, getting public Wi-Fi out to populations and neighborhoods, for example, that are maybe have been disconnected since the internet started, like maybe there's some data on, like which of these homes have internet the longest, and some are just been like this all the years, there's been zero. And maybe there's an opportunity where, because it probably be very, very expensive to try to get, it'd probably be too expensive for the first round, right? To get fiber optics to all the homes that are disconnected, right? But it would be a good start to get fiber optics into a local park, for example, I don't know, in that neighborhood. And then people can come to that, and then we're building these sheltered overhangs, right? That people can kind of co-work in there as like a learning hub or as a Wi-Fi hub, right? So, what kind of nuance, maybe there's ways to find different ways to kind of get to the point where we get everyone access to their home, but we're not starting with that, right? We're starting with doable initiatives, right? So I guess not really a question as much as like, hey, any other ideas like that, right? That we can embark on that allow for us to get closer, but not being limited or paralyzed, right? By not even starting,
No, I agree. There, that's why we're having this conversation to, figure out ways to implement this strategy. And Sapar just kind of, came up with a great idea with, reaching out to the schools. I think another idea would be to, we have a lot of, with this pandemic, we have a lot of folks who've been turning out to food banks to go and collect food. And a lot of those folks, if they can afford food, most likely they probably can afford the internet. So getting surveys in their hands, when you disperse a bag of food and say, hey, why don't you bring this back and let us know, where you stand. Do you have Wi-Fi? Next time you come pick up your food and just, drop it off. We'll make it a quick, simple survey to help understand where those folks live and have those metrics. Because if you have those, then you're able to get more funding in that sense. So that's another route that we can go. But also, working together with Tony Botala to help bring some ideas as to what we can do and how we can go about bringing this idea to San Leandro so that everybody can benefit from free access.
So let's talk about scoping for this project, because when a young person sees this project of, hey, internet for all, fast internet for all, fiber optics for all, in San Leandro, it's going to be like, where do I start? Where do I start? Type of scenario, right? And we did just share a bunch of ideas how they can start. So I think they know what to do and what to think of. Basically, at the end of the day, it seems like what we want students to do is to identify just, their own starting point, right? And their own vision, right? Of what they want to create, right? And it has no particular bounds, right? They just need to know that we have certain things in place, like we have public Wi-Fi downtown already. We know that we need to tell them what we know, right? I think that's number one. Telling them what we know already, and then based on what we know, they can fill in the gaps, right? And discover where the opportunities are, right? So how would you, as a elected in San Leandro, take their ideas, right, with them, right, to be able to evolve it to implementation? What would your process be? And what would they need to scope their project to be so that it's actually implementable or partnerable with you, right, to make happen as an elected in partnership with all the other electeds and government staff and so forth?
That's a good question. And I think in working with this idea, internet for all, a lot of the background work would have to be, creating a survey and telling the story. And Phoebe and Sapar are perfect examples of those who do have access. And we need to understand, there may be other friends in their social circle or classmates that don't, that may have to go to a Starbucks or a Taco Bell to tap into their Wi-Fi. Creating that survey, the scope would be to implement strategy. What does that strategy look like? Kind of dividing, looking at the steps, what we need to take. The scope of work would be to build this. We have free Wi-Fi. How do we implement internet for all? But the scope would focus on what steps we need to do to get there and figuring out those steps. I know in the back we need to figure out the metrics. And like I said, I'll do some research to see if there's, if we do have those, like a gap analysis. But to create that survey would be great to have to have started so that I can advocate for that. We all can advocate and we can be a team. And this is kind of like, entrepreneurship where we have this idea. We want folks to believe in this, in what we're doing, so that we can say, hey, we have internet access downtown, but we also want the whole city to be connected. And we did this. We all did it together. And this is what we did. We ran a survey. We figured out what the gaps were. And then on the back end, we figured out how we can implement Wi-Fi all over the city and work with Tony, work with staff, and working with myself to be the advocate. We can all advocate for this together until we get free internet. Who knows? They may be part of this project for the duration of however long it takes to get free Wi-Fi. Maybe just an internship program, but there can be so much more added in that sense where Phoebe and Sapar can say, hey, I started on this, and now the whole city has free internet, and we were part of that beginning conversation to help implement that. So the scope is pretty narrow in that sense, where I think we need to focus on questions to ask to create a survey, and then from there we'll need to move up and talk to Tony and staff, and then figure out funding sources and programs that would work, like Raspberry Pi, and come up with an idea to see how we can get that device in the hands of our residents, also, and have them connect to internet.
So one thing that I'd like to make an adjustment on is not necessarily removing the survey, but not depending on the students who are in your program between February 26th and May 23rd to do a mass survey conduction, because they won't have the ability to do that, right? Just from their sheer existing networks and so forth. Maybe in mass they can, right? They can do a sample test of their own home, maybe some friends and so forth, but they won't get to the point where they're getting to thousands, right? And so they get to the ones and twos and threesies. And so maybe what we're not asking them to do is start from scratch, right? Maybe what we're doing is I think there is some data that Tony has from the fiber optic master plan before. And I think that is a lot of data that I think that students can have as pre-existing data from surveys that they've taken. I think they actually did speed tests of places too, and people. So maybe what we do is we dig in on all the data that we have from the city, right? And put it into this program so that the students in this program can see all that data, can review all the information. And then their role is to maybe confirm it with their families, their friends and network, and just to have their own insights and subjective understanding of it all, right? And then what they're creating is strategies, right? A single strategy. How do we get to the point? What creative ideas and solutions, whether it's built or digitally built, whatever the prototype is, right? They're prototyping strategies, right? To create this exciting distribution of fast internet for all using San Leandro fiber optic strands, right? To get those who are disconnected typically, to get them internet, and maybe and free internet, right? I think would be probably the goal. So what do you think about that scoping, right?
That's a great strategy. That's a great idea. It's more on the innovative side where Sapar and Phoebe can have impact in creating that aspect and taking a deeper dive into the fiber optic, the strategy plan, to understand the metrics, to understand the data that went behind there, and if there's any gaps that we need to fill, and what those gaps are. And we can, we convene and figure out, what the next plan is and move forward. And if there's any ideas that they have or prototypes that they want to bring up, that's something that we can work together on.
Okay, cool. That sounds like a great plan. So we, I think, covered a lot of territory here with how to kind of think about the project and how to scope it out and so forth. We weren't able to kind of dive into some of your story and kind of what you're all about. So I didn't want to miss the opportunity to do that, because I feel like everyone has their story and has their what they are now is a journey. It was a journey, right? So what was your journey to get to where you're at now? You've had interesting, and then that's a pretty deep one to ask at the end, right? But you've gone through some school, kind of in and out of it, and you kind of went down this path and got some really strong LGBTQ rights, kind of that you've been building on, and that's what you're bringing as a huge strength into the city. Tell us, where you came from, and that kid that was at, the variety of fast food restaurants, connected internet, type of kid, to hear.
Right. Yeah. Thanks, Derek. There, to let folks know, and then Phoebe and Sapar, I grew up in Southern California. I grew up in a town called El Monte, which is 15 minutes east of Los Angeles. And this city was known for their lion farm. They had Gay's Lion Farm in El Monte, and there's a lion statue, and that's the high school's mascot. But the lion from the lion, one of the lions from the lion farm, is a lion that you see at MGM movies. It's the lion that roars, and the MGM Grand, that lion is from the lion farm in El Monte. So that's the city's claim to fame. But I grew up here. I moved when I was 18 to Hawaii. I had excuse me, when I was trying to understand who I was and struggling with identity and getting support on who I was as a person, excuse me, I figured out that I was gay, and told my family, and they had a hard time accepting it. So in order for me to live my life how I wanted to live it, I moved to Hawaii. I applied, got accepted, and left. I said I wanted to get as far away from this city and my family as possible, and educate myself. And that's what I did. I educated myself, educated my family. They're on board. They're completely supportive, 100%. And it, helped build our relationship and make us, who make me who I am today, and make them who they are, because they can also advocate for those who went through the similar issue with, kids who are struggling with identity, and to be that support mechanism. I think they were just more afraid because they didn't know much about it, and what they heard were not good things about being LGBTQ. And so my parents and I had to educate them, and I think that's one of my biggest accomplishments, is bringing them on board to help believe in me, and that we can work together. And I'm just any regular person. So I lived in Hawaii, came back to Los Angeles, and started working in the legal support industry, legal technology. The company that I work for provides software and review platforms for attorney to review their data. So the company that I work for is kind of like the Google, or the Google for lawyers, where you can find the smoking gun email. We process data, we host it, we review it. We have teams of attorneys that do that. That's a field that I got involved in because I thought I wanted to become a lawyer and go to law school, and wound up staying on the litigation support side on the back end. So that's what I do. I've been doing that. I started off here in Los Angeles, and then moved up with my husband to San Leandro in 2011. So it's been 10 years now that we've been up here. I got involved in in politics by applying and getting signatures to run for city council. And part of that was to, push forward cannabis and rent stabilization for the city, and to make sure that folks have access to cannabis in San Leandro, make it legal. And that's something that I did when I ran in 2014. I was unsuccessful. And then I ran in 2018 and got elected. But I'll go back a couple of years. In 2016, I got on the school board and was an advocate for LGBTQ, and working together was the first LGBTQ on the school board. And now I'm the first LGBT Latinx male on the city council. And so, I think me being on the board, on the city council, is a reflection of our diversity in the city. And, San Leandro is a great place. My husband and I, when we were looking to buy, we only wanted to stay in San Leandro. We didn't look in Oakland. We didn't look in Hayward. We were looking and picking out different locations in the city. And then we stumbled upon Floresta Gardens. And the home that we bought is the former police captain's home, Pete Ballou. That's his childhood home, Councilmember Ballou. That's the home that he grew up in. And so my husband and I now live there. And his sister has a key to the house. So, when we bought it, she came over and was, in tears, like, now I have to give this over. I said, you know what, you keep that, because if we need you to doggy sit or what have you, you have access. So we bought our home in 2013 and have been in Floresta Gardens since. So we've been there for 7 years now, and it's a great neighborhood. I love it. We love San Leandro, and love serving the community and working together and being involved. I also work with a nonprofit called Lavender Seniors of the East Bay. I'm president of that organization, and that organization is an LGBTQ organization that provides services for seniors. So seniors who are in isolation. We have social programs like Second Saturday Lunch Bunch, Third Friday Lunch Bunch. We have a film series where we show LGBTQ films. Now with the pandemic, we get folks on Zoom and we we play movies. And so it's a great organization. And like I said, we partner with Amazon to create this communication release isolation program to help get smart devices to those seniors that do not have access to it, and also provide access to Wi-Fi. And so, yeah, that's something that I've been working on. It's been great. We love the city. I'm up for re-election coming up in 2022. So, my husband and I, we planted our roots here. We plan on staying here. It's a great city.
Great. Thank you for that. And that's good. That's cool to know that you're in Pete's house, Pete's old childhood house.
One of the bedrooms has his name etched in it, Pete. So we haven't replaced the doors yet, but I think once we do, I'm going to cut that out and frame it and give it to him.
Oh, that's great, man. Yeah. Oh, how old did you ask him how old he was when he did that?
No, I did not. He must have been a kid. But there's still remnants of their upbringing in there. There's the old ironing board that folds out from the wall. The parents use that to measure the kid's height, so you can see like his sister's names and his name and how they grew in the dates. So that's something I think once we pull that out, that I'll cut that and frame it so that it's a part of childhood memories that he can have.
Small town.
Yeah, absolutely.
Stories like that, I think is what connect a community like San Leandro, and people are able to have these stories passed around on through the grapevines,
Right.
And that's what I think builds the community that we have, and what makes people kind of attached to San Leandro, even though it's still a little city that people don't really know much about, but the people who live here, are the ones that, feel the wholesomeness of it, right? And feel the connectedness to it, right? Certainly things that we got to iron out, but for the most part, people are, stroll around town, knowing people here and there. So, and they feel comfortable. So, Vice Mayor Victor Aguilar, thank you for having us and sharing your story and sharing your interest in digital equity and LGBTQ rights and policing. We've actually covered a lot of grounds here. So very interesting conversation. And thank you, Sapar, and thank you, Phoebe, for contributing your knowledge and some quick rough draft, bright ideas you guys got. That was also very helpful and fun.
And
I had one more comment.
part of your weekend. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
That's right. Saturday at 10 a.m. And that is it. We'll hold you back for a little bit, Victor. Phoebe, Sapar, feel free to stick around. We're going to have Victor go into the next stage of his onboarding. So thank you all.
Thank you, Derek. Thank you, Phoebe, Sapar.
Mr. Aguilar, I had one more thing.
Yes.
So I know that we touched on Oakland, and I know that about, on a good day, 15 minutes from Oakland is UC Berkeley, which is, one of the most well-renowned institutions in the planet. And I'm pretty sure in their computer science department, there's this computing center where they talk about maximizing learning regardless of the model. So whether it's online, hybrid, traditional, and they basically talk about how they can maximize students' learning capabilities and abilities within, regardless of the model. And I think that's something you should definitely look into for the internet access. And also Stanford, Stanford, I think everyone knows Stanford. So they also have an internet observatory that does about the same thing. And I think if you look into, there was I think in 2018, India had this huge internet revolution where over 80 million people got access to the internet. And in the States, we didn't really feel that effect, except maybe Phoebe remembers the whole PewDiePie thing where his subscriber count was basically about to be eclipsed by some Indian YouTuber group. And that was because of a huge portion of Indians, especially in the South, were given access to the internet. And I think it was just one person in his company who were able to do that through a company called Jio, JIO. If you were able to get Stanford and Berkeley on board for a program like this, I think it would have an insane impact. I think it would go well beyond San Leandro with those two institutions.
I know, I hear you on that, and I think a perfect example is, being having folks in India have access to that, but I look at TikTok, and so I've been seeing a lot of folks from India creating videos and areas that are remote, and so this is something that I think everybody should have access to. And so it's just you kind of understand the culture, you understand people, we're all the same regardless of economic background. And I think that's something that we need to have equality and equity in, is access to the internet. But I'm partnering with Stanford and Berkeley. I think that's a great idea. I'll look into that aspect of it. But this is something that we want to be like the India model, where we give access to everyone in San Leandro.
And I would challenge the students who are listening, and then also Saparan, like if you feel like you want to reach out to those two institutions because you have some background and context, I would say reach out to them on behalf of Vice Mayor Victor Aguilar and say, hey, we just had a podcast with the Vice Mayor of San Leandro. We're talking about this Internet for All kind of initiative that we could be doing with students, and we'd love to have you engage in a conversation with the Vice Mayor. Maybe Victor's available, maybe they're available, and you can spark a combo. So yeah, go for it. Connect them for Vice Mayor. He's a little, adults are a little busy sometimes, so it's hard to kind of have the priority list just float up. So if you got some ideas, you now have a connection to the Vice Mayor of San Leandro.
And I will make myself available. I know last week we had an issue with timing with my calendar. We had a city council work session that went way over the scheduled hours that we were trying to get online, and I was just completely spent. So Derek and I were going back and forth, like, let's reschedule. We can't do this. But I most times I am available. So feel free to contact me, and I am responsive in that sense. So don't hesitate.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you all for joining. And hope you all have a fun project development time for the students who are watching who are in Vice Mayor